Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Looking for Love in All the Wrong Dust Jackets, a show where three disgruntled harpies talk to you about everything we love in romance, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, whatever we like. I'm Liz.
I'm Danny.
I'm Wiggles.
And welcome to the episode. Today, we are discussing the book Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. But before we do that, I got to warn you, I got to let all the people know that we are crass and unhinged and very unfiltered. So if you don't like swear words, if you don't like talking about the bedroom activities with all of the words used to describe it, thanks for checking us out, but you've been warned.
There's some Disney movies out there for you.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, get me caught up on your lives, folks, before we dive into this book. What have you been up to?
This book inspired me to do a new run through of Schitt's Creek. So I'm already like halfway through season 1.
Good job.
Yep.
Proud of you.
Yep.
Fair enough. I watched a lot of random stuff. I watched the new Wonka movie.
Is it any good?
Is it weird?
Yes, it's weird in kind of a delightful way. I really enjoyed it, actually, because it's not the same like retelling of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's like his origin story. And so it's him trying to become a chocolatier and the reason why he's obsessed with it and everything. And it's funny. He milks a giraffe at one point.
Oh no.
I don't think you should do that.
No.
Oh, no, I
PSA,
wouldn't suggest,
don't go
but-
out milking giraffes.
Yeah, no. But it was pretty funny. I didn't hate it. I was afraid I might.
You know, the bar, it really is on the floor for movies right now, which means when they can't cross it, I'm like, God damn. What's it like sucking that much at your job? I wouldn't know.
Jeez, Wiggles. Tell us
Tell us how you really feel.
I will. I'm sorry, but like, do you know how starved for new movies, television that people are, and then you can't even come to the table with something that's functional? Anyway.
What about you, Liz?
Oh, yeah. I read Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chapeko. It is a fantasy adventure book about a vampire hunter who is requested by his queen in, the kind of generic fantasy and setting to work with these two vampire lords to help solve a mystery. And it's very good. I think I gave it a 4, maybe a 4.5. I don't remember. It was supposed to be my break from romance, and I knew there was a romance plotline in it, but I didn't know it was going to be so involved. And now I'm like, I want to meet some vampire lords that I can also get down with.
Ow, 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 ow.
Bam.
But it's got a lot of action in it. Like, it's a lot of fight scenes.
Ooh, like that actually come to fruition or some Twilight shit?
No. Like, she actually writes out the fight scenes in really good detail. And even though there's a lot of them, they all read differently. And I'm like, this is nice. This is nice.
Oh, that's nice. Ooh.
Unfortunately, I've heard from the TikToks that the sequel is not nice. It's not good, which makes me very sad.
Sad panda.
So
Yeah, but TikTok's lied
I
to
was
us
gonna say,
before.
TikTok lies to us a lot.
I know. And it was also ARC readers, so maybe they'll clean up the book a little bit if a lot of people are giving bad feedback.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You know what TikTok didn't lie about? This book,
I know.
Yours Truly, by Abby Jimenez. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So, Abby is basically all powerful and can do whatever the fuck she wants.
Apparently.
Yep.
Miss Ma'am has been on the Food Network channel competing in a cupcakes war, I think is what she was on. Cupcake Wars. And then created I think she had the first Naughty Cakes and then created a fucking chain. So now there's Naughty Cakes in Minnesota, which means I will probably go there and eat yummies.
Well, it started in Minnesota. She lives in Minnesota.
No, she moved to Minnesota. She's originally from California.
Oh,
I was going to say, I thought the first one was the LA one.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was, sorry, my bad.
No, she doesn't talk. I mean, she writes about Minnesota in her books, so she must like it here. But yes, so she did that, and she was like, aren't I just awesome? And she was like, you know what? I'm going to write some romance novels, and they're fucking good. And you're like, okay, calm down, ma'am. And she's like, okay, that was a fun challenge. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to become a fucking TikTok star.
And she's fabulous. That's where I realized her was TikTok.
Correct. And so, yeah, check out any of those. Go to her bakery, read her books, watch her on TikTok, because can't stop, won't stop.
I don't understand people that have this much ambition and drive and success. I'm just sitting over here like, lucky. I'm proud of myself. I did 2 loads of laundry today. They didn't get folded and put away, but I did them. But they're clean now.
I didn't even do that.
I went to work today and I did my job.
Same.
Like, what more do you want from me?
Right.
I worked 9.5 hours today. I get a pass. God damn it.
Well, I work from home, so it's a lot easier for me to, in between my 7 fucking meetings or whatever, to be like, and I put the laundry in. Good job.
Yeah, but then you have to go in your dungeon basement, which terrifies me.
Yeah, it's evil and spooky and full of spiders.
Does it have the radiator from Home Alone?
No.
Oh.
No, it doesn't have that.
At least then you would have a friend.
I suppose.
Anyway, so that's Abby Jimenez. Danny, do you want to tell us about the book?
So, of course, I can tell you about this book. So, the book is about 2 doctors because they're going to, of course, have Dr. Love. I love Dr. Love. So, it's Briana, who is not living her best life. She is about to finalize her divorce. Her brother's an end-stage renal failure, which apparently I can never say correctly the first time around. And she is working towards a promotion, which she and pretty much everyone around her thinks she's a good shoe-in for this promotion, but it might not happen. So she's not living the greatest time. And then in comes Jacob. He is also not terrifically living his best life. He's, broken up with his girlfriend, and now she is going to marry his brother because, we love that for him. And he's just started at this hospital. He's very introverted and having a hard time adjusting and kind of thinks everybody hates him, which they sort of do for not good reasons. Also, 7 patients died on his watch on his first day.
Dr. Death.
Dr. Death.
Which is an excellent podcast, by the way. And then they run into each other, literally. And she hates him immediately because she assumes he's after the job. Her boss kind of implies that that's why he brought him in.
Mm-hmm.
And shenanigans ensue.
That they do very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot happens in this book.
It does, but not in a cluttered way, I don't feel
No,
like.
it is very well written that even though a lot happens, including a faked dating scenario between Briana and Jacob.
Which you love to see it.
I loved it. We love to see it. For his family so that they don't feel like he's upset that his ex-girlfriend of 2 years is marrying his brother.
Right.
And pregnant.
Yes, we do find that out later, yeah. It's a thick boy. I mean, for a romance novel.
That's true. It is.
It's like 380 pages or something.
Yeah, the physical copy is like 380 some pages.
Yeah, so, you're going into a wider world than you typically get in a romance novel because they're trying to keep it to roughly like 250 pages or something.
A lot of ones that have been coming out lately, though, have been a little bit longer. Like they're getting to be consistently around 300, unless you get, some, I don't know. Weirdly enough, like shifter romances are shorter, and I'm like, you have more material to work with.
Right? Well, I did finally start that time I got drunk and
Saved a Human.
Werewolf.
Oh, that time I got
You did a potion out of a werewolf.
Yeah.
That's the one.
I saw a physical copy of that in Barnes & Noble yesterday.
Good.
I know. Good for her.
But yeah,
why were you at Barnes & Noble without us yesterday?
Because it was Valentine's Day and I was there with my husband and I only bought 2 books and I'm very proud of myself. They were 2 hardcover books, so I spent $50, but nonetheless.
Damn. They gotta chill on that.
I know.
But yes. And that book is it's also like it's a shifter and it's skinny. It's
Yes.
very skinny. But getting into this one.
So when she runs into him in the hallway, she's running because her brother's been admitted to the hospital. She's in a hurry to see him, blah, blah, blah. She runs into poor Jacob, breaks his phone.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of just like walks into her brother's hospital room and stares at her.
Like you do.
Dumbstruck. And she loses her shit on him. He decides the best thing to do is to write her an apology letter. And it's adorable. And I need to point out to both of you how much I loved the letters back and forth.
Oh, I loved
Yes.
the letters.
Yes. They could have done the letters longer and I would have been fully in.
I
Oh,
agree.
yeah.
I loved it. I loved every second of it. I was like, yes.
I loved that both of them were having the struggle of, because they're doctors, they had like 4 on 3 off or something for shifts, and then it would flop the next week. So then they wrote consistently back and forth to each other for those shifts, 4 or 5 letters a shift and everything. And then all of a sudden they were off work and they're like, no, this doesn't work for me.
I can't talk to you now because I'm not going to see you.
And I don't have your cell phone number because we're not doing the exchange numbers thingy. So she virtual stalks him to find his information.
To get his Insta. Yeah. I love that the letters like start off very long and eloquent, especially from Jacob. And then they just devolve into like putting sticky notes everywhere with little jokes and stuff.
But I also love that she went out of her way to go get special stationery paper because she was like, oh, my paper's shit. And she even has a line in there where she's like, I'm sorry, I don't have real paper. And I was like, she's like, lined paper would have helped. And I was like, not lined paper is still real paper. Like, what do you mean?
It is also surprising to me that anybody would not have like at least a notebook, just like a spiral notebook in their house, like a lined notebook. But
Well, she was at that point, she was at the hospital when she wrote that first letter.
I thought she was at home, but maybe you're right.
I think she was at the hospital because she just grabbed a piece of like printer paper
Sure. That makes sense.
and then wrote it out. And then she was bitching about the fact that her hand was cramping because they don't write out things anymore.
Right. I will say maybe my one disappointment with that is that it comes back in a different way, but it doesn't really come back with like, oh, this is a cute thing that they do for life now. So like
Right.
they leave each other notes and stuff like that. And that would have been nice.
Yeah, it
I
would
think they
have been.
probably do. It's just not written.
If it's not written, it's not real.
I imagine that for the rest of their life, they are going to be finding notes for each other and sticky notes on random things. And I love that it's always like they put it under the keyboard of their charting computer. So it's like, he'll find this when he's charting.
I bet all of their coworkers are like, throughout this entire book, are just like, y'all are messy. Get it together.
I do like though that the letters come from Jacob's social anxiety, which is a massive plot point in this entire book. And Abby wrote it exactly how I feel it, and I didn't need to be called out so hard.
This is the first of many times I will probably bring up Part of Your World, but she does a really good job of taking the time to research the characters that she's trying to talk about. And so her first book, Part of Your World, one of the main characters is small town, and the small town she writes actually feels like a real fucking small town.
Sure.
Like you're like, oh yeah, I probably have driven through this town in Minnesota and didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't surprised that she was hitting the nail on the head with the anxiety button. I was like, God damn it, woman. This is aggressive.
Well, and she also wrote it in a way that wasn't boring for the reader, because the
Yes.
thing about anxiety is it's very repetitive. It's very internal, right? So it's just constant thoughts coming into your head. And then it becomes very repetitive of like, oh my God, what did they think to that? What did they say to that? How do I do this? How do I interact in this setting? And yet somehow it didn't feel repetitive reading it. Like Jacob's thoughts didn't anyway.
That spoke so hard to my anxiety.
Right?
Certain things, like he's always looking up the menu before he goes places. I'm like, oh, I didn't need the call out on that. If I haven't been there before, I will look up the menu every fucking time before I go. because I need to have an idea, because otherwise I feel like I'm staring at the menu going, what am I going to eat? Because I'm also an incredibly picky eater. I don't love that about me, but I can't do anything about it. So,
Well, and I like that it's this thing that gets in his way and it's an obstacle, but it's not an obstacle to the two of them.
Right.
You know, and so it definitely has the message behind it of, if you find the right person, your weird quirks aren't going to matter. They just are part of you.
Right.
I also like that it's not an obstacle to his job.
Well, what she wrote in there about Jacob specifically choosing an ER doctor or a trauma doctor, because it is so fast paced that you don't have time to allow your anxiety in the way, is actually also very real. Because I mean, I'm going to be relating this to bartending because that's the best I got. I'm not a doctor. I'm sorry. But the days that were always easiest to me bartending were the days where it was so busy that you couldn't do anything other than literally just like the next thing in front of you. So just the quieting of your brain, because your brain is so busy doing things it has to do that it can't do the anxiety right then and there.
Well, and it's relatable too from an introversion standpoint. Like, you can't pause to think that you're uncomfortable with the amount of people around you, and so it doesn't really, like, you're like, whatever, I've got to do this next thing.
Yeah.
Right. But as soon as you get home that day, you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that was another thing that she did really well, was his level of introversion. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that people are like, if you're actually an introvert, that you're like at one of three levels. The first level is the type of person who can turn that switch off and can fully immerse themselves amongst extroverts, but is going to regret it for days, right? The second level is where I would say probably all three of us are at, which is that just being around the wrong person is the most exhausting thing.
Yes.
Incredibly, yes.
Yes.
Oh my God, yes.
And then there's the people who need to go live in the woods. So that's where you stack, in my opinion.
I
Well,
wouldn't mind living in the woods.
That's why you're just above it, Danny.
Yeah,
step
I'm
away.
really close to the top of that threshold.
Yes.
They also explained it really well, where Jacob's ex, Amy, was the extrovert that wanted to be at the parties and do all the things, and he never felt comfortable ever doing any of that. Whereas Briana can make him feel comfortable in those situations just by like knowing how to interact with an introvert. Not that being an introvert requires a special level of knowledge of how to interact with us, but you have to know the people around you. And if somebody doesn't want you like grabbing your hand and dragging you out on the dance floor to do all that shit, then you don't do it.
Well, and you also, so speaking as I always say I'm an extroverted introvert. I can extrovert. It sucks. It sucks a lot after a while, but you have to understand the person you're with. And so like, we know plenty of extroverts that know us well enough to know, oh no, they just need to
Right.
go back and recharge their social battery for a minute, because I can only do it for so long before I'm like, I want to punch you in the face.
Have you noticed it's getting worse the older you're getting?
Oh, yes,
like you
so
need more
much.
recharge time than you used to? Because
No.
I do.
Because I always needed a lot. It's not worse because it's always been at this level. I just masked it a lot more. And now I'm like, okay, bye.
Maybe it's more that I just recognize it now instead of like trying to push through it and continue to be social. Now I'm like, no, bitches, do not talk to me.
I always masked it fairly well, but I feel like I've gotten much worse. It drives my mother nuts because I would do things like go to a movie by myself.
I love
She's
doing
like,
shit by myself.
How? Why do you do that? And I'm like, I fucking love that. I go to the drive-in by myself. I can sit in a car and watch 2 movies for like $7.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I bring my cross stitch, and it's a delightful evening for me.
You know, Flowers by Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like, broken up and I'm fine. For me, that's just an introverted album, like anthem right there. Like, it's just like, I can do this myself. I'll go get my own flowers. Goodbye. Thank you. Getting back to this, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked about the way she covered introverts is at a certain point, in Briana and Jacob getting to know each other, she's like, oh, you wouldn't want to do that. There's people there. Or, you know, are you sure you want to do that? Because then I'd be around you all the time. And he's like, yeah, because it's you.
Right.
Like, you can be in my personal space all the time, and I'm fine with that. And that is true. As an introvert, there are people that you're like, I can tolerate way more of your presence.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, there's people who've earned that shit.
Yes. And I like that it wasn't just like, oh, I hate people. And it's like, no, it's not. It's that, I don't know. You get to know somebody enough, they don't demand as much energy out
Correct.
of you. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is then when you have that person, you can also then be in other scenarios more, because they're your blanket, your safety blanket, or your buffer, or
Right. Well, like let's say you're going to go to a crowded bar or whatever. If at least one of the people who's going to be there is someone that is one of those people for you, then it's okay because you can just cling to that person.
yeah.
And this is why introverts need their extroverts, because we need you to want to go to the bar. So we go with you and we go outside.
Yes, correct.
It's a perfect balance.
While we're talking about Jacob and his inability to kind of really connect with people easily, I also thought that it was so well written, his, being the new guy at work scenario.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's super stressful for the new person coming in. You're like, I have no idea who you people are. Depending on the job, you're like, I actually don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
I don't know where everything is.
Yeah. But for the people who are working there, they're like, oh, I just keep going. And it can be, so I guess PSA, if you work at a job and a new person comes in, maybe just be a little nice to them. It helps a lot.
My least favorite thing is when you start a new job and for some reason all the people working there are like, just assume that you somehow have learned all of the information that they have learned. And you're like, the fuck are you talking about? What are these acronyms? They don't make sense.
I've been at my job for 2 years and people still say stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Legitimately.
So I'm going to change gears entirely. One of my favorite things about Abby Jimenez as a writer is that she's really fucking funny.
Yeah, this book was surprisingly funny. I was not prepared for the funny.
I was prepared for the funny.
So the moment I knew like this was going to live up to the first one, and I was like, yes, okay, I'm in, I'm ready, was she has this line, I'm canceling my bikini wax appointments. I'm just going to let the forest reclaim the land. Succumb to my inner swamp witch. And I was like, haven't we all at one point? Like, just, it'll be what it'll be down there. When the monkeys start swinging from the vines, then you know it's time to clean. God damn. She's got really funny fucking lines throughout this whole book. But that one was my favorite.
The book is very amusing there, and it tickles you in really funny ways. I also really like that there are many moments in this book where the characters kind of have revelations about themselves. Like, she was so concerned about her brother and everything, and he made a comment which admittedly once you look back at, you're like, okay, yeah, that probably wasn't the best thing to say, but he was trying to be comforting and everything. And she at one point takes a step back and goes, oh wait, no, am I the asshole here? I think I'm the asshole here. And yeah, she was absolutely the asshole in that situation. He said something about people can live for a long time on dialysis, and that was because he had
well, I think it wouldn't have been that bad, but he prefaced it with it could be worse.
Yes.
Right.
Which never start with it could be worse. It's so condescending. I hate that phrase. But he was trying to be comforting and everything. He's just kind of awkward, and he didn't get where it was coming from. And she did have to take a step back later on and be like, oh wait, no, am I the asshole here? I think I'm the asshole here.
Well, and from Jacob's perspective, right, like it is almost impossible to say the right thing in a scenario when somebody tells you something is big and awful as their brother is in end stage renal failure.
I'm really bad at that. I'm like really bad at that. I'm like Liz Lemon with the broom. There, don't be cry. Like, just, and no one's gotten mad at me yet. So I guess I'm not as bad as him, but I'm pretty bad.
He seems to do a lot better with the, like, if there's an action, because I fell in love with this man immediately when he found her crying in the supply closet and he just left and came back with a washcloth.
Yes.
I know. I was like, oh.
It's like, oh boy. And then there's also a scene where she finds him and he's stitching up a little girl's doll.
Oh, right?
That's the moment where I fell for him. I'm like, oh, he will be mine, sir.
He is the epitome of the soft boy.
Yes.
Yes.
And I want it.
He wears socks with like different animals on them because his niece and nephew like it. And sometimes the niece and nephew can't agree on what animal should be on the socks. So he wears one of each.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He does it at their wedding.
The negative side of his personality, if you can call it that, or the side that leads to a lot of the consequences he has to face, is he is a textbook people pleaser.
Yep.
And it shows up in so many ways early on that you're like, oh, okay, I see you, I see me, I see you, right? But like what he ends up doing, the amount of comfort he provides his brother and soon-to-be sister-in-law is insane to me.
Yeah.
I am 100% in the Briana pack. Like, I'm like, I would fuck his shit up. I'd be fucking people's shit up.
I get both sides of it, right? So Briana is saying that if her brother or sister started dating her ex, she would be pissed and like, you know, burn the world. But I also get Jacob's side of like, well,
but I didn't actually, it's not like I was in love with her madly.
Right. The relationship really wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he didn't get closure on it or whatever. And why make other people miserable?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that you should, you know, make other people comfortable and whatever, but they're not doing any of that on their end, right? So that's the part where it's like I understand wanting to be the person who keeps the peace because I do it all the fucking time. But at a certain point, you can just say, "Hey, look, I'm not comfortable, but I'm here for you anyway."
Mm-hmm.
But I think a little anger was justified.
Well, and it's one of those things where like nobody in his like surroundings really seems to understand to a degree, or even a small degree, on how to help him with these anxiety things. I realize they don't kick up as much around his family as they do in other situations, but so his ex-girlfriend who was marrying his brother was guilty of that to a almost comical degree.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
she took no effort to try to understand how she can help him in these situations.
It did kind of seem like, and maybe it's part of his people pleaser nature, that he also is not very good at expressing
Yes.
Correct.
his situation. And Briana kind of just already understood it because her brother Benny has severe anxiety as well.
Mm-hmm.
That helped. But his people pleaser nature went all the way to the point of them having to fake date.
Yes.
Like all of the way.
Because he lied to his family about having left his old hospital where he was chief, saying he followed his girlfriend to here. And that's why he switched jobs.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if she had said no, he would have found a way out of it. I think that's the part of the early romance of this, is that the reality is she said yes and he was like, bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like if she had said no thank you, I just don't think that that's something I can do. It wasn't like he was gonna go find somebody else.
Yeah, no.
No.
You know, like it was always about her.
Well, and the reason that in that instance he wanted it to be her, one, because he likes her, but two, because his sister walked in on them eating lunch together in the closet. Because apparently that's a normal thing we do at hospitals. is eat lunch in closets. Can't say that I've ever eaten a lunch in a closet, but you know.
I will say I've never gone to a closet, but I've got like when I've worked at places, I've definitely found like the quiet place. Instead of going to like the cafeteria or whatever, I will go find
I go
is
sit in my car most days.
Yeah. So it's like sitting in your car, but not having to leave the building.
Yeah.
I think again there it really depends on the work environment you're in.
Yeah.
I have the benefit now of having a desk that's a little bit isolated at my current job. I just eat at my desk. It's no big deal. When I was working at a thrift store that will remain nameless, every single one of us at various points would just go and sit in our car because we were like, I can't be around people anymore. And that was like everyone on staff. Like at a certain point would just be like, this is my break. Peace. You know, and so I'm sure like when you have more hustle and bustle, like finding that private place is so critical.
So let's talk about the fake dating, huh?
Okay.
We love a fake dating, don't we?
We do love
I do love fake dating. I was very excited. I was like, yes, please.
I was not ready for it because, you know, I didn't read the back of the book. I also think it doesn't say on the back of the book about the fake dating business. Maybe it does. Anyway, I'm here for it. I love any scenario where two people get to know each other through plotting and scheming.
I mean, I do love some plotting and scheming.
Yes. I will affirm you. It really pushes heavy on the letters on the back of the book.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, I really do love a fake dating scenario when both parties are like, but I like you anyway. Like, you're like, I don't hate you, or it's not a spiteful thing. It's just, it's like, hey, my life will be easier if we do this. You in?
Yeah, I like that. It's cute. That's a very Bridgerton thing where they, you know, they faked it until it became an actual thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I always like it when they're like, hey, but this is mutually beneficial because I don't have to be humiliated and we're friends.
Well, and another thing that I've noticed in the books that I've read of hers, which admittedly is only 3, so I'm not like an expert, but she does a really good job with fucking angst. Like, really, chef's kiss on that angst. It's way more in part of your world, but I love the like tension of, am I allowed to touch you? Am I not allowed to touch you? Where do we stand? We'll never fucking know because neither of us know how the other person feels, because we couldn't possibly know how the other person feels because we're all in this sham together.
Yeah.
Well, and they won't talk to each other about it because they don't want to make the other person uncomfortable because they're like, well, this is fake. This is what we agreed to. It's fake.
Yeah.
Well, and on top of all of that, Jacob is donating one of his kidneys to Benny, Brianna's brother, to save his life.
Yes.
Yeah. So the stakes of not fucking this relationship up are pretty high.
Right.
He would have donated regardless. That was never a thing that was going to affect it.
Correct. And he didn't even want her to know, but then she found out right away, which I appreciate. Like sometimes I don't want the big reveal at the end. I want you to just know right away.
Yeah, I just want the big reveal to be like, oh, yep, I actually do really love you, and that's what we get, and that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also like that it was complicated on her end because we haven't really talked about her too much. Prior to the events of the book, her ex-husband of 12 years spent the last 2 years of their marriage cheating on her with Kelly, I think is her name.
Yep.
And she has a few moments where she realizes, she's like, yeah, they started sleeping with each other 2 years ago, but emotionally they were involved with each other much longer than that. And I was the obstacle to their happiness, which is really fucked up.
Yeah.
And so she goes into it not like comfortable with it being this fake dating situation because the stakes for her don't exist in that situation. She does not have to risk her heart. She does not have to actually be in a position where she could get hurt in her mind.
Didn't work out too well for her, does it?
No.
I will say he does make the date of her divorce a much better date because the date that she is officially divorced is the date that she finds out that Benny is getting a kidney.
Correct.
Not that he planned that. He did not know. But
No.
And they had already started to like each other by that point.
Yes.
Because it was the letters, and then
They were already becoming friends. They were eating lunch together every day and everything.
well, and then there was the like 3-hour phone call.
yeah.
Oh, that was a good phone call.
Yeah.
He sat in the rain with the dog
Because he just wanted to talk to her.
because he just wanted to talk to her. And he didn't have good cell service in the cabin that he's fixing up, which I feel so much. Do you know how many times I have been in a Minnesota cabin that didn't have good cell service?
Every single Minnesota cabin.
Yep. So every single fucking summer.
Yeah.
Well, and that's sort of backing up a little bit because it's before they agree to a fake date and all of that, and is following a series of their letters. They don't stop after that, but they do kind of peter off. And up until that point, they don't have each other's social media. They don't have each other's phone numbers. They have no way to contact each other other than these letters that they're sending each other back and forth. And it's
At the hospital. They don't have their addresses or anything. They are literally just putting the letters in places they know they'll find them at the hospital.
Right.
right. And they're both so desperate to still be in contact with each other because they get those endorphins going when they're around each other, that she goes out of her way to stalk him on social media and finds him, and he's like, thank God. This is what I need.
And you can definitely tell that he never would have done that. That's why you need your extrovert buddy, because otherwise you're just gonna sit there in your little introverted head and never acknowledge the other person.
It's true.
By the way, can we talk about, so when she stalks him, she finally messages him on Instagram and everything, and he's replied to her a couple of times, and then she asks him a question. I can't remember if it's can I call you or whatever, and he's like waiting for a reply, and then realizes that he doesn't have enough cell service to continue messaging on Instagram, and he's like frantically trying to refresh it, and I'm like, I felt that in the depths of my soul.
Yeah.
I'm like, I felt my anxiety spike on that one. So he literally was like, I'm grabbing the 3-legged dog and we're going to the restaurant down the road because they have a signal.
It's true. Well, and I love that it comes back up a couple of times, including in front of his sister, who's like, you don't get cell service at the cabin. What the fuck, asshole? And he's like, I went to the restaurant. And she's like, they have this moment where in the midst of their fake dating, he just the whole time, and this I think is what I liked about it the best, he just tells the truth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just tells the truth of, I just really wanted to talk to her.
I just wanted to talk to her, so I sat at the restaurant down the road for 3 hours. And then
got bug bites.
He got a shit ton of bug bites. And then at one point, he was like, oh yeah, I mean, I sat in the rain. And she's like, it was raining?
Right?
Well, he does mention at one point when they first do the fake dating, meet the family thing, where he says the best thing we can do is try to stick to the truth as much as possible, because his mom is like a
Sex therapist.
Yeah.
And it's like, you couldn't have led with that, my guy. Right. We are not prepared for this.
This is literally a person whose job is to deal with people's relationships. She's gonna know.
And I love that it comes back around. Because at one point, it really doesn't come up while they're fake dating, whatever, and everything. And then he's having a conversation with his mom later on. And she's like, I'm so glad it's finally real, or something like that. And he stares at her, and she's like, I can hear the Minnesota mom voice of the
It actually it was a really great line, because she was like, it was a pleasure watching two strangers fall in love.
Yeah.
And God damn it, she's so good with these goddamn lines. I'm just like, could you stop?
Yeah.
I could feel the mom judgment through the book.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you are correct, ma'am.
If you know,
Yeah.
you know.
But they do get themselves into a lot of scenarios. They have to move in together because she blurts out at Amy and Jeremiah.
Because Amy pisses her off.
Yeah. So Amy is the ex that's marrying the brother, and she gets a little snippy with Briana at the engagement party, and Briana,
And not even that snippy.
No,
like
no.
she basically just says, "Oh, I didn't realize you would be that far, right?
Right. And so Brianna's like, yeah, well, we're moving in together.
And then like she also makes some comment about like them the walls being too thin at her house or something, and their sex being too loud, and you're like, ma'am,
that's too much.
Ma'am, this is Walmart.
I love a good throwback.
Yeah.
I just love that Jacob's response is, well, you have to actually do it now because then my family will know, because apparently his family just shows up all the time to his house.
I would hate that.
I would hate that too.
Right.
But in my brain,
never a scenario where my mother would just show up.
No, that'd be terrible. So anyway, his family just shows up and that's his excuse. Because let's be honest, it's an excuse to get her to move in with him.
Oh, he wants her there. He wants her there
he's
hard.
already in love with this woman by this point.
Mm-hmm. It is. Well, and mentally he's acknowledged it, right?
Yeah.
Like he's like, whatever it takes. And he's got these really sweet lines where he's like, I'm never going to get enough of her time.
Right.
But this is at least more time, even if it isn't enough. And I'm like,
she also has mentally acknowledged at this point that she's in love with him.
mm-hmm.
However, she doesn't walk in, but she like overhears him arguing with his ex, specifically about Brianna. And she thinks that he's still madly in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, because of her past with Nick, I believe, her ex-husband, she's got all of the walls up against that possibility.
Hella traumatizing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and the other part of it is the mental gymnastics you go through of convincing yourself that something is not real, because if it was real, then what you're doing isn't right. And like that whole thing that she's dealing with and he's dealing with is so much more complicated, because every time you go, that felt real, you have to remind yourself it's not. And so you're constantly in self-punishing mode.
Yes.
But I did find it super adorable when she finally moved in, because Brianna, one of her like emotional quirks is that she just eventually, and I feel this in my soul as well, eventually just like flips a switch and goes, fine, fuck it, we're doing it. And that happens several times in this book.
It does. She definitely has the fuck it, we'll do it live mentality so many times. But the best one, I think, was the blow up mattress, where she's like, okay, I'm gonna put this blow up mattress out here, and he's like, what if my family comes over? And she's like, well, I'll put it away. And he's like, okay Brianna, okay. And then, like, immediately his sister is knocking on the door, and he's like, oh, time to put that theory to the test. She struggles so much, just like, and doesn't even give a shit about anything else, is knocking shit off the walls. She's broken a picture frame, and he's not even mad. He's like, this is the best.
Yeah, he was having a great time with that. He's just watching. He's not helping.
No.
Just watching.
No, he's like,
well, his excuse was valid. What if I was in the shower?
Yeah.
You need to be able to do this by yourself for your plan to work.
malicious compliance.
Yes. Yes. But no, it was super cute when she did move in with him, and his little internal monologue of being like, oh, and then I get to make the coffee for both of us and like all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, buddy.
Poor
Oh,
sweet
you got
boy.
it hard.
Thank God this is a romance book where I know you will get together at the end, because otherwise this could go bad.
Right?
I think we need to talk about one of my favorite moments. So her best friend lives a little ways away and everything, in a different town. And at one point she makes the joke of, let me know when you get to the single bed scene.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the one bed scene? Oh
Yep.
my God. So funny.
And Brianna at one point runs away and runs to her best friend's house, because of course you run to the bestie's house. I would too.
Mm-hmm.
And he messages her and is like, can I come?
Oh my God. My little heart was like, you're so brave.
I know. I was like, oh,
Right? Oh my God. Well, so can you guys remind me what happens leading up to it that triggers that? Is
Okay.
it the fight?
Is it the fight? No, I think it's, so she runs away when she realizes that Nick and Kelly are pregnant.
No, that's at the very end.
No,
That's
Nice.
way at the end.
What is the fight? No, it is the fight. So
It
it's
is
the
fight?
it's the fight at the she thinks she's second best. And she's realized that she's in love with him, but doesn't think that he's in love with her. So that's the reason. So she runs away to her best friend's house. He comes to stay and everything. And as it do in Midwest, the door expands.
Yeah, as somebody who lives in a house that was made in the 1800s, that do be happening, guys.
Yep.
It do happen.
Well, so the one component that you guys are missing from not having read part of your world first is that there's sort of a magical realism in that book, and it gets summarized because it's not very well explained on purpose that the town provides for itself.
Okay.
And so there's something about the town that makes it just go, I'm gonna make that thing happen. And so without spoiling too much of the other book, like an example is these two awful people stay at the bed and breakfast that Daniel and now his wife Alexis own. They're just awful people, and somehow all of these acorns come flying out of this tree, like the wind picked it up and starts pelleting them. And so these like little moments where you're like, I guess you could probably explain it away, continuously happen, specifically in that town. So when she goes there, like Alexis is like,
But so the door sticks. They're stuck in her bed, his bedroom. They're stuck in his bedroom, and so they were like, okay, well, we're gonna chop the door down. He's like, no, this is original wood. No.
Yeah.
Which is actually also fair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely fair. He's like, put a dehumidifier out in front of it. It'll probably de-stick by morning. Also fair. But Alexis totally has a moment of, and welcome to the only one bed scene.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, you bitch, I love you.
Right.
Yeah. And that scene was, it was so great because it's just more of Jacob letting his walls down and getting out was it scotch or whiskey? I don't know what it was. And they got a little drunky pants.
I love that moment where she's like, but you don't drink. He's like, I drink. And she's not when my anxiety is high. Thank you, sir, for understanding your needs in that situation.
Yeah.
You understand how to control your anxiety to a degree. And when your anxiety is really high, you don't drink. Good boy.
I was upset though that nothing happened in that scene.
Oh, I wanted them to. So
That's
bad.
probably my one like complaint about the book overall is that I kept thinking, okay, now's the moment where they're going to confess their feelings and they're going to go for it. And it kept going. And it was like, no, the needle has been moved.
They're bad at peopling together.
It's true.
Well, she does confess at that moment that she loves him,
Yes.
but he
Doesn't believe her because
well,
she's drunk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which happens like several times, not necessarily in as overt as saying I love you, but so many moments where you're like, friends don't do that for each other.
Right.
Like you guys, but they're so convinced that it must all be fake, right? That it's just impossible.
It's the double-edged sword of the fake dating is
It's
how
true.
much of it is real and how much of it isn't.
Right.
Now I need to read Part of Your World. God
Yeah,
damn it.
you do. It's really good.
Oh, I mean, I was probably going to anyway because I'm now obsessed with her. I already kind of was, and then I read this book and I'm like, God damn it, how are you this amazing?
Yeah, I'm upset at people who can just do all of the things.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you have time?
I will say, because here's the thing. I spoiler alert, my recommendation is going to be read A Part of Your World. But I was shocked at that book, the way it made me cry. I was like, why is this happening to me?
What is the moisture?
But it was also made me laugh so much. Ugh, she's fucking good at this. Stop it. Don't stop it. Don't stop it. Give me another one.
No, Abby, don't. Keep going. That sounded oddly sexual and I didn't mean it to.
Goo.
So then they finally do realize that it's not fake, that they do love each other. And it's really good for about 4 seconds.
Well, when you jump into expressing that, where one person is actively having a panic attack and the other person is just convinced that he's now gonna break up with her, or if you can break up with a fake dating, you know, whatever,
Right.
like because he's in love with this other woman, and your answer to that is sex.
Maybe.
Maybe. It was good.
It
was a good scene. Could have been more.
Could have been more. Especially because that's the only scene we get.
Yeah, right.
The other stuff is fade to black, or talking about the fact that they.
Yeah.
She did sort of not fulfill a promise that was made to the reader twice. He's like, I am going to have a tea party downstairs. And he doesn't do it in what we get to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bummer.
Just saying.
But then she finds out. At the worst moment, she realizes. So they run into her ex-husband and a very pregnant Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And she realizes in that moment that she is pregnant.
Yeah. I love the line from, I think it's her mom, who's like, 2 doctors and you don't know how to have
Yes.
safe sex?
Well, and that's maybe something we should talk about, is like, we have not talked about Benny or her mom at all.
Right.
Right. And so that's another layer to the onion that is her trauma, is that she had this seemingly good dad from a child's perspective in her life for 8 years. And then while her mom was pregnant with her brother, he just takes off.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't have this, she does not have a healthy attachment style. She's
Right.
just like always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Well, and her mother kind of conditioned her to not trust men in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I do really love the conversation that she ends up having with her mother about this, because she's freaking out because she's realized she's pregnant, and she is like dropped poor Jacob like a bad habit. Just, she freaked the fuck out. And her mother kind of is kind of talking her down. She's like, here's the thing. I am sorry that this is what I made you think that relationships are.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was 8 when her father left, which means her most pivotal years as far as like understanding, like learning and understanding the beginnings of relationships, her mother wanted to tear everything down.
Right.
And was really stressing that you needed to, like, even when she got married, when her mother got remarried and everything, she kept the house she owned.
Mm-hmm.
She, all of these things, she really drug down everything that a man could be. And a lot of that was her mother's own trauma. But she's like, here's the thing, honey, I'm sorry if that's what I taught you.
Well, to be fair, it did happen to her though then. Because then Briana lost everything when Nick left.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, she lost her house. She lost everything.
And what happened to Briana is more complicated than just, okay, she doesn't have her dad around anymore. Like, her whole world had to shift because she now has not 2 parents taking care of her. She has 1 parent who can barely afford anything.
Yeah,
right?
who can barely, they had very bad food insecurity and everything until her mother became a nurse.
Right. And so the consequences of a man leaving are elevated in that situation. And I think that when you add on the fact, and this is something we haven't talked about yet, but not only does she realize she's pregnant, but she reveals that she lost her pregnancy with Nick. So then she sees Nick and Kelly show up, and Kelly's visibly pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's world shattering enough. But then you realize on top of it that, oh, fuck, I am pregnant too, which means in her mind, he's going to leave.
Right.
Well, yeah, because it's not only that she lost the pregnancy, she lost it right after he left her.
Right.
And he did not come to support in any way, shape, or form the fact that she was losing their child.
Well, and from her perspective, he wouldn't have cared either way.
Mm-hmm.
He was not going to be in the life of that child.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what this book does, which is so important, And it's one tiny little moment, one little scene where Jacob's talking to his mom about all of this and like revealing everything to her. And, you know, we have a lot of books where they use past trauma to further plots or characterization and all that. And that makes sense. But this book acknowledged that so well just by having Jacob's mom say, she's traumatized.
Right.
This isn't about you necessarily or like what you have done or haven't done. She has her trauma that she is going through. She needs to seek help and all of that. And that happens previously as well. Because again, the author's doing such a good job of setting up this shit up. When Briana realizes that Benny is depressed as all hell. He's losing his entire life and he's lost everything. And she has to come to the realization that she can't force him to be better and take care of himself. He either needs to do that on his own and she can help him through all of that. But unless he makes the decision to do it, she can't force him. So then it comes back around with Jacob and Briana. And I think the conversation about mental health in this book is just so well done.
It's so well done. And I really appreciate how he kind of got through to her as well, is he gave her his journals. Because her main thing is that she doesn't know what's real and what isn't. And you don't actually want me. You just want to be with me now that I'm pregnant. And so he journaled constantly. And so it was a compendium of all the reasoning up to, you know, present day of their relationship and everything, and showing how it slowed down when they were living together. The journaling slowed down when they were living together, because he was enjoying his time with her, and the realization that, you know, where he tells her to start reading in the journal is, this is the day I met you. And he confesses in that page, when he's just writing to himself, that the reason he walked into the room is because she was so fucking gorgeous and he couldn't stop staring at her.
Yeah.
Well, and she specifically mentions to him that the only way she could ever really feel secure is if she could have like essentially a window into his soul. And he's like,
Bet.
Okay. How about this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very
I bawled.
He's the sweetest soft boy.
I bawled while she was reading the journal. I was like, I did not go out in public. Aren't you proud?
I'm more just like happy for your safety.
I mean, correct. I did go out in public at the beginning of this book, but not towards the end.
It's usually safe at the beginning, unless you're reading himbos
Or dead romantics.
Well, that's for sadness. No, I was gonna bring it back though to the discussion of Briana growing up poor, because it does actually come up frequently. They have this whole would you rather game that they play with each other, and she eventually just admits to him, because they're talking about like, would you punch me in the face for $1 million or $1 billion or something? And I'm like, yeah, punch me in the face.
Bet.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Don't even be mad, bro.
But her just explaining like, I will never have enough money to feel secure because I grew up so poor that like I can never turn down an opportunity to get more money. And it's not about like a hoarding or anything. It's just like a level of insecurity that never leaves you, no matter what you do.
It's very in line with if you have family members who survived the dirty 30s. And that's a little bit specific to this area, but in general, the Great Depression, there's a tendency that you will find like stores of pocket cash.
Yeah.
Everywhere, because you're terrified that there will be some day when you need it and it's not there. And it's the same thing. It's that insecurity, it drives you to make sure you find different ways to protect yourself. And so that all made sense. She built these characters that felt very real because she thought about who they were.
Right.
So one of the things I really like about her writing is she takes an idea and she expands it into the rest of her book, almost to the point where it ends up taking a life of its own on. So in A Part of Your World, the big one was Grace Costs You Nothing, which you'll get to know if you read the book.
And I will.
But in this book, there were a couple of them that came back, but nothing was quite as strong as We Agree to Be Harmless to Each Other.
Yeah.
And to the point that ends up, if you read the epilogue, ends up being their vows.
Right.
And I really like that she has these underwriting messages, because in both this one and A Part of Your World, she doesn't shy away from, like, yes, she talked about mental health issues in this one. In Part of Your World, a factor is medical deserts, right? So she tackles these really big topics, but doesn't make them the center of the book. And so she can make a statement about our world and can still be, I don't know what the right way to say this is. She can still be poignant about her perspective without making it the romance have to circle around it. And it has to be this thing of one person thinks this, one person thinks this. It's just, this is an observation of the world.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I do really appreciate that. And I very much appreciate her discussions of mental health, because she showed a couple of different mental health issues in this book, and I really appreciate that.
I was a little it gave me a little bit of pause when we got to the third act breakup, right? Because it's also a third act breakup with a surprise pregnancy, and I'm like, cool, my 2 least favorite tropes. But it actually worked really well. Because we spent so much time, it felt like, with Jacob's anxiety, and then to, at the end of the book, be able to give that same attention to Briana and her issues. And it didn't feel like the pregnancy was just like, and now she's pregnant.
Right.
It felt like, oh, this is actually an extremely important part of their relationship and their story. Where was I going with that?
You were making great points, so I was with you all the way.
I was with you all the way.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I don't hate those tropes. I just hate the way they're used a lot, because it worked this way.
I think you like it when it has like a legitimate purpose in the situation.
Right. It's not like, oh, we need a third act breakup, so I guess it's this one.
Well, and I want to be really clear. I'm not shitting on books that I would feel like don't qualify for this. But I think what makes her books distinct is she's writing a novel that is romantic. And a lot of romance novels, it's about perpetuating the tropes without really figuring out why the characters would find themselves in that situation.
Sure.
And this is a novel where, like, every character has its arc and is going in a particular direction.
And they're not illogical.
No.
In the situations, like, there's a reason it had to be her. It's because his sister walked in on them in the closet, and then that, of course, when he said that, you know, before that he was dating somebody at work, of course she would assume that it was this woman that he was standing in a closet with eating lunch. Well,
and I think she did a really good point. It was the woman who then immediately could stand up and be like, oh, you're Joe. I don't remember which sister it was. And so it's like, okay, that has to be your girlfriend if she recognizes your sister on site.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and she establishes even, like, smaller details. Like, we haven't really talked about Benny, but he ends up meeting Jacob's sister one time and is like, I like that.
Yeah.
But has this really sad moment where she's like, oh, you're going on dates, and he's like, not like this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you get to see that he, like, yes, he's progressed since he found out he's getting this kidney, but that didn't solve his problems immediately.
Everything.
Right.
Right.
And so she builds these things up so you can see how the choices that they're making are going to impact the ending. The happy ending is not a foregone conclusion. They have to make the right choices.
Right.
And so I could see her writing a tragedy one day where, like, her characters choose to go a different direction.
I don't have it in me to read that, though.
I would bawl.
I do. I would read the shit out of that.
Why do you want people to not be happy?
Sometimes you just want to be sad.
No. Go read Colleen Hoover then.
We all know that I'm good at getting traumatized.
Don't you put that evil on me. That was a one and done experience. That was awful.
Same.
Yep.
I think one of the other things I love about this book is all of the little shit feels so real. And the thing that got me so much is when Jacob brought Briana Taco Bell. And the reason is because that is one of our like me and Paps like silly little gifts to do to each other, to be like, I brought you Taco Bell home. So I don't know if she's just like taking things from her life and that's why they feel so real, but just like all the little shit they did back and forth, it wasn't just like, to me, it didn't feel like a romance author going, oh, I don't know, this little dumb thing. It felt very much like, this is very thought out. This is a real thing that happens to people. This is in the book now.
I agree. I also, the thing about the Taco Bell cracks me up because he like gives her so much shit. He's like, you're going to explode. And she's like, worth it. And he still brings her Taco Bell.
And I'm sorry, how do you not know that that man loves you then? He brings you Taco Bell.
Well, he has a moment earlier in like really early on when she tells him to bring the cupcakes.
Yeah.
So the moment where they have the transition from I hate you to I guess I won't be such a fucking asshole is she decides that she's going to extend the olive branch of letting him know how to win the nurses over. And tells him, you should have brought cupcakes on your first, or you should have brought treats on your first day. Perhaps cupcakes will make up for it.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that. Knowing the number of nurses I have, that they would be like, bitch did not pay to cross the bridge. But so he decides like, okay, what's your favorite cupcake? And she's like, red velvet, but I don't want one. And he's like, in my experience, when people say they don't want food, they're not going to be mad if it shows up. Right. And I was like, a wise man.
He feeds her a lot in this book.
Yes.
He brings lots of food. And
Yeah.
I'm like, so you do know a way to a woman's heart.
Right? There's another part where she's mad at him about like another one of their dumb questions, like something like, would you eat me if I'm a gummy bear? And he was like, yes, I would. And so she's mad at him. So he buys her flowers and he's like, is it all better now? And she's like, he's like, I'll buy you food.
Yes.
And she's like, I want Chinese food. And he's like, done. And she's like, you're getting half the menu. It's like, that is what we want.
That is what I want.
We want pretty things and food.
That's not that hard.
It's not complicated.
I also love the couch thing. When she first goes to his apartment, he has 2 recliners.
One
One is for him and one is for Lieutenant Dan.
the dog.
Because his 3-legged dog is named Lieutenant Dan, and it makes me so fucking happy. But so she's like, you don't have any place for anybody to sit. And he's like, well, I have 2 recliners. That is all that would be needed. And then he goes to sit down and Lieutenant Dan takes the other recliner and she's like, this one's the dog's. And so he immediately starts looking for a couch.
Mm-hmm.
And he buys one specifically because she made a comment about it. And this is before he is fairly into her, but he doesn't think she's into him or anything. And she doesn't think she's into him yet. She's lying to herself. And she's like, wait, you're getting a couch? Oh, he's getting a couch for her. Because couches are not cheap.
They're not. But also, at least in my experience, the things that matter the most, the gestures that matter the most are the ones that aren't like, oh, I bought you a necklace. It's like, oh, I bought a couch so that when you can come over, we can sit together.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so yes, we want food. We want shinies. Yes. But probably the third most important is we want you to hear us when we speak.
Yes.
And then act on it.
Yes.
Yes. You don't have to
That's
act on it
powerful.
every single time. But when you act on a comment she made, it was an offhanded comment. She wasn't fishing for anything.
No.
He was just like, oh, well, I see her point.
Yes.
Well, it's like in 'Tis the Season for Revenge, which I guess I'm referencing in 2 episodes back to back here, at like the very end, and what's his butt buys her the electric blanket, and she's like, you bought me an electric blanket? And he's like, yeah, because you're cold all the time.
Right.
It's like, you listened, you paid attention.
Right? That's the kind of shit that you go, oh boy, I got the deep feels.
My heart fluttered.
Here's the thing. You don't even have to work that hard. Like you could just
No.
pay attention one time when going to a coffee shop and go, oh, she ordered this. And then you buy that for her the next time you go to a coffee shop. It's not hard. Anyway. Now I'm beefing with an imaginary person who didn't buy me a coffee today.
I always think about buying you guys coffees when I come over, but then my anxiety hits in and I'm like, shit, I know Wiggles likes the cinnamon dolce stuff, and Danny doesn't like coffee, but sometimes she'll drink a frappuccino. But do I get her a hot chocolate? But what if she doesn't want a hot chocolate? And then I just don't buy anything. It's very complicated.
So one of my favorite things about showcasing their different personalities was, one, how quick to accept and relax Briana was, but also, like, we talked about him having anxiety, but the way she showcased it was so great. The moment when she's gonna bring him over to check out her house because they should have seen each other's houses if they're really dating,
Right.
and she's like, just dress comfortable because I'm not wearing a bra, I'm wearing pajama pants, and you can just be there at the same time. And he shows up, and he says in there that it took him a day and a half to figure out what he was going to wear, and he landed on wearing his workout clothes.
I feel that though.
Right?
Yep.
But then it comes back later when Briana really like leans into knowing him, and he goes out to the small town where she is with her friends, and she sends him like 2 or 3 paragraphs of like, this is what you need to know, this is a picture of the house, this is the town, this is what we're probably going to be doing, this is what you should expect. And I'm like, oh girl, you have it, you are already in love with this man.
Right?
That is one moment that really stuck into my brain, is when she had told him it was fine if he came and everything, and she was talking to her friend, and she's like, okay, I need to go take a picture of the driveway. And her friend's like, what? And she's like, he has to be able to see it, or it's gonna
He has to know where he's going to
park, which I also get.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, I was often relating to both of them at the same time.
I know.
Another character that I want to talk about real quick that we really haven't talked about is Xander, his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he doesn't play a large role in what happens. He does introduce the idea of you could do a fake dating thing, and like mentions that, hey, you know, she's really cool, and says to him, you know, like, hey, you know, you could be less of a dick to my guy, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my favorite parts early on in the book was they're out of the bar, and she comes over after he's like giving her this like Xander has told Jacob that he should try this fake dating thing, and she comes over, is excited that he showed up because he's flat out said, I don't come to parties, I don't come to bars, this isn't my thing, right? And immediately Xander transitions into this story that makes Jacob look really cool.
Yeah.
And Jacob's thought process is this man wingmanning me? That felt so relatable.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, fuck. How do I get out of this? Number one, because I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah, there's a lot of I don't know what to do with my hands.
But also, it's like, obviously, buddy, what did you think he was gonna do?
Yeah.
That's what they do. We also didn't talk about a few of my other favorite characters, like Grandpa and his smoking addiction.
Oh my god, and the fact that every single woman in that group
eventually gives
him
manipulated
cigarettes.
into giving him cigarettes.
Yep.
I also feel like we should talk about Jafar, just like for a minute.
The parrot,
who was fucking hilarious. Had great comedic timing, that one.
Yeah. I don't understand having birds as pets, but I especially don't understand having a parrot that is just free roaming in your house. Because, like, where does it shit? Does it just... Can you essentially litter box train a parrot?
No. But they don't poop as often as you think they poop.
Mm.
So when you put them in their cage at night, that's usually when they end up doing it.
I
don't own a parrot. I want to be very clear. I don't own birds. I just know people who do.
I feel like media has told me the opposite of that, and that birds shit all the time.
I have.
In a cluster, yeah. If you have one bird to worry about, like, here's the thing. You're worried about them pooping all over your house. That's not really the problem. They save it up for when you put them on your finger.
I have owned a bird.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Look at you.
Yeah, we grew up with one. His name was Andy. He was an asshole.
They are.
They
Birds
are
mean.
So I think we should just remember that we should all be harmless to each other. So
Yeah, let's do that.
What a nice little tagline.
it is a good tagline. I really loved it.
So let's go into our ratings, Anna. What did you guys think of a spice rating?
It was like a 2. It didn't have much spice. It was well written spice for what existed, but there wasn't a lot of spice.
I was also thinking a 2.
Mm-hmm. I would complete that consensus.
Lovely. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What about your romance rating?
Like a 4?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I'll agree with that as well, mostly because I don't know what I want to give. So
Okay.
I really, really liked the book, and so I think a 4 is a good romance rating.
Yeah. I mean, is their romance complicated? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think that's why I like it, because it's complicated and its complications are handled.
It's complicated in not toxic ways.
Yes.
Yes. Look at that.
It's complicated in two people just trying to do their best.
Okay. A 4 it is. Overall rating?
So I give it a 4 on Goodreads. Goodreads doesn't let me do half ratings, so 4.5 is actually what I am reading to. I really enjoyed this book.
That's a pretty high rating for Danny.
It really is.
I would agree with that. I would go with a 4.5. Honestly, the only reason it's not a 5 is just because part of your world was just that pinch better. And I feel like the distinction needs to be made.
Ugh. I don't know, guys. It's so hard.
Is it though?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is.
Well.
No, I'll probably go with a 4.5 as well.
We all really fucking loved this book. I was excited to come here tonight, and I was like, guys, you don't understand. I'm really excited. And then you did understand. Yay.
That's why it was so hard to talk about the hating game a couple days ago, because I was like, but we have a better version of this exact story to talk about.
Right? It's a
I
little
know.
odd that we had two stories back to back where the brother decided to shack up with my man's ex.
Yeah, we didn't
And then-
actually plan that, weirdly enough.
Yeah. It's weird that it happened twice.
Yeah. So let's go into recommendations. Who wants to kick us off?
Okay, Danny.
So I am going with Secretly Yours.
Sure.
Because with the note leaving aspect and everything, I like this better than Secretly Yours, but I also liked Secretly Yours. So I just, that aspect of it I like.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
As I said earlier, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. It's crazy. I know it feels like it's coming out of left field, but it's my recommendation.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would recommend Happy Place by Emily Henry,
Mm-hmm.
which is also a fake dating book. I would say it's not that Yours Truly is lighthearted, but it has a lot of lighthearted moments.
Mm-hmm.
And Happy Place is it's a friend group who are going to their like yearly vacation home, and it's the last year they're going to be able to go there. So it's supposed to be super special, and everybody is like trying their hardest to make sure it's the best possible year that they get to go. And they all kind of coupled up. Well, our main characters were engaged and then broke up, but they don't want to tell anybody and ruin the vacation, so they fake date throughout it, or are fake together throughout it. So that's the end of the episode, folks. If you liked it, please find us out there on the socials at Wrong Dust Jackets. We're out on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, YouTube, all the best places to go. You can also check out our website, wrongdustjackets.com, and find out what's coming up next, what books and movies we're going to do. Check out our blog for other reviews and recommendations. And then make sure you give us, if you can, 5 stars, a comment, all of that on the Spotify or the Apple Podcast or the Google Podcast, which apparently is going away. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear what you'd like us to do next. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.